Okay, so let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers because this upcoming offseason is going to be the most important in recent team history. And, we've got this time, between now and when the new league year starts, there's going to be a lot of speculation, a lot of throwing darts at the board. And every quarterback that is set to be a free agent, expected to be traded, everybody seems to be labeling as, yep, Steeler. Whether that's Justin Fields, whether that's Kirk Cousins, whether that's Russell Wilson. Everybody is up. Yep, Steeler. Justin Fields, Steeler. Kirk Cousins, Steeler. Russell Wilson, Steeler. And I will say this, they have to make a move of some magnitude because for all of the talk from Mike Tomlin and the owner Art Rooney of, hey, we're tired of not winning the playoffs. If you roll into week one with Kenny Pickett as your week one starter, those words ring hollow and they show that you don't care about winning. You care enough about winning to get to 9 wins to make sure you stay above 500, as if that means anything. You care enough about winning to be in the wild card hunt and maybe sneak into the playoffs and then get your asses kicked by a far superior team like you have the past 7 years. That's the extent of winning that they show to care about if they roll with Kenny Pickett this year. They have to make a move. Whether that's Fields, whether that's Cousins, and Kirk Cousins is the big one to watch. And every Steelers fan who's stuck in 1986 was like, oh, he costs too much. Kirk Cousins' reported asking price is $40 million a year. In terms of total cash, that puts him around the 11th highest paid quarterback in the league. That's fine. A guy like Kirk, who has played consistently well throughout his career, that's fine. Not to mention the fact that they can convert a lot of that to a roster bonus, a signing bonus, to take some chunk of it off the cap. That's more than reasonable for a guy like Kirk Cousins. When the Rams traded for Matthew Stafford, they did it because they needed a guy that could take them over the hump, work with the roster that they had, and turn them into a real contender. And the first year that they did it, they won the Super Bowl immediately. Who's to say that Kirk Cousins couldn't do that for the Steelers? And by the way, maybe I'm naive. I'm not worried about the Achilles injury. We live in 2024. Modern medicine is as great as it's ever been. Tom Brady came back from a torn ACL in 2007 and had an entire career after that where he won a boatload of Super Bowl. I'm not worried about Kirk's Achilles. I'm not. Hell, Adrian Peterson, a running back, tore his knee to hell, came back and won NFL MVP. I'm not worried about Kirk's Achilles. It's not as if he's a mobile guy who needs to run all over the field. He's fine. He'll be fine. And when he got hurt last year, he was on pace. I wrote this down just to make sure I got it right. Kirk Cousins last year on pace for 38 touchdowns, 4,950 yards, and only 10 picks. Those are MVP type numbers from Kirk Cousins. And you give him an offensive line that can be fixed through the draft, the weapons that they have right now with George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, running back duo of Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and an offense that's going to be pretty similar to what he ran in Minnesota. Kevin O'Connell and Arthur Smith both love those outside zone run schemes and utilizing the middle of the field. It won't be hard for Kirk to adjust to life in Pittsburgh because the offenses are pretty similar. And if you're the Steelers, what's stopping you from making the move? The only thing that's stopping them is the owner who, like a lot of fans, is stuck living in the past. Because I got news for you. In a conference that features Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, you ain't getting anywhere if you don't have a quarterback. You can sneak into the playoffs. You can sneak in and be the 7th seed and then get immediately boat raced by one of those guys, like they just did. The Steelers won 10 games this past season with arguably the worst quarterback play across the league with Pickett, Trubisky, and Rudolph. Now look, no disrespect to Mason Rudolph. He came in, he proved that he's a capable backup and will probably get paid somewhere else, good for him for it. But that's what he is. He's a capable backup. He is not a franchise answer. And so all these Steeler fans who think that Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph can lead you to a Super Bowl, I I wish I could be as naive as you and live in that world where that is my thought process. But unfortunately, I'm a realist and can recognize that they're not going anywhere if that's the move that they decide to make. Even if it's not either, if they sign Ryan Tannehill, they don't care about winning. They don't. They can tell you all they want that they care about winning, but if you make a move like that, you do not care about winning. Because there's no way that you can trot out one of those two guys and expect to compete in the AFC. So I got news for you. This isn't 2019. This is 5 years later, baby. This ain't Ryan Tannehill turning around handing off to Derrick Henry 40 times a game and then a few times being able to use play action off that and hit a bomb to A.J. Brown. That ain't what this is. This is 5 years later. This is Ryan Tannehill who got benched for Will Levis. And you think that because him and Arthur Smith worked together 5 years ago that all of a sudden, oh man, that's the answer the Steelers need? No. And I will hear this part that it's a risk to either trade for Justin Fields or sign Kirk Cousins, although I don't see the risk with Kirk Cousins. But if you want to make the argument about trading for Justin Fields being a risk, I hear you. However, you know what else is also a risk? Trotting out Ryan Tannehill or Kenny Pickett and expecting them to do something that we haven't seen any evidence that they'll do, and that's become great. Nothing that we've seen from Kenny Pickett says that he'll be great. Ryan Tannehill is 30, like quietly like 36. So is Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins has consistently put up 4,000-yard passing seasons, been a multiple-time Pro Bowler, has been far better than what Ryan Tannehill's been. Kirk Cousins is still playing good football. Ryan Tannehill's not. So yes, it is a risk trading for Justin Fields, but it's also a risk with far more upside than trotting out Kenny Pickett, who we know stinks, or trotting out Ryan Tannehill, who we know stinks. Makes no sense to do that. And if Pittsburgh does that, that tells you all that you need to know about how they feel about winning, what they think about winning, and where their minds are when it comes to running a franchise. Because if Kenny Pickett's the week one starter or if Ryan Tannehill's the week one starter, they're content being a 9-win team just in the wild card picture. They aren't in the business of winning. They are in the business of entertainment if that is what they do. And I got to tell you, a lot of fans are going to be pissed if that's what they do. Because as I've said, look around. You think that you're beating Patrick Mahomes with Ryan effing Tannehill or Kenny effing Pickett? No, you're not. And again, yes, it is a risk to trade, probably be a second round pick and a day 3 pick next year for Justin Fields. Sure. But if he ends up being good, it's completely worth it. And I would rather see them take the risk and at least go for it and say, you know what, we got to get better. We'll try to get better with Justin Fields. I would rather see them take that risk than just stay stagnant like they always do, quote the Steeler way, and trot out a bad quarterback in 2024 when that will not get the job done. Because if they do that, then you can basically just punt on this season. If you're a Steelers fan, you don't even have to watch because you know how it's going to end. It's like a movie that you've seen a million times that isn't very good. You just kind of put it on as background noise. That's what the Steelers season would be if they roll with Kenny Pickett or Ryan Tannehill. They got to make a move. And the two best ones that they can make, number one, sign Kirk Cousins. And again, the cost shouldn't be a problem because one, the Steelers can easily get $50 million in cap space, relatively easy in terms of moving money around, restructuring contracts. It's fairly simple to do. Again, they'd have to, if they wanted to restructure TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, make a few more cuts, if they cut Patrick Peterson. There's a lot of different things that they can do to free up cap space, and they can get a lot of it relatively easily. But the cost isn't a problem. You got to pay for a franchise quarterback, and you get what you pay for, because if you go cheap, guess what? You ain't getting good results. You can win 9 games, which seems to be the new Steeler standard is, 9 games. Pat ourselves on the asses for that. But if you want to be a contender, you got to spend money. And not on defense anymore, man. They have the most expensive defense in football. Look where that's got them. I love TJ Watt. I love Minka Fitzpatrick. I love Cam Hayward. They haven't won a playoff game since TJ Watt's been there. And I can't remember who the columnist was, who suggested, hey, if the trade was right, they should trade TJ Watt for a quarterback. Yeah, they should. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the Chargers are going to be calling and be like, hey, you want Justin Herbert for TJ Watt? If they would do that, then the Steelers should sprint to say yes. But nothing like that's happening. I think the point is that a star quarterback is far more important than anything else. Because it does not matter how good the roster is if the quarterback stinks. And the Steelers need to realize that now. They seem to be making some good hires on the coaching staff in terms of bringing in Tom Arth, former pass game coordinator from the Chargers, to be their quarterback's coach. Bringing in Arthur Smith, who I think can be a fine offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh. But they got to get the quarterback right. It cannot be Kenny Pickett, and it sure as hell cannot be Ryan Tannehill. Because if it's either one of those guys, or if they draft someone like a Bo Nix, forget about it. Because if they do that, they are telling you all you need to know. They do not care about winning. And that's just what it is. If they go out and get a Kirk Cousins, if they go out and get a Justin Fields, is there risk associated with both of those? Sure. But at least they're being proactive and saying, you know what? It could be a risk, but we need to get better, and we're going to try. Because if they don't, then there's no point in even watching the season because we've seen this movie before.